Hello, my name is Giselle Nissen-Mao. I was hearing impaired until 3 years ago when I suddenly became deaf. In January, I celebrated my bat mitzvah, and for my mitzvah project, I wanted to make a documentary about 4 accomplished deaf women and how they went through their lives being deaf. The making of this movie was a life-changing experience, and as I approach the beginning years of my adulthood, I will cherish this deep in my heart. Enjoy the film.
Action. Ready to go.
Please introduce yourself. Please state your...
Action.
Hi.
Hi.
Tell us all about yourself. What's your name, where are you from, and what is your profession?
My name's Kimby Kaplan. I'm from the Southwest. I grew up in New Mexico, Colorado, Texas, Arizona, so that whole area is my region, and I'm a cinematographer.
Action.
Do you think that being deaf...
My name is Kim Gold, and I was born and raised in Arizona during a time in the 50s, 1950s, and 1960s.
My name is Marley Matlin, and I won't tell you how old I am, but you can figure that out.
The circumstances with my deafness are a little bit ambiguous. They picked up on it when I was about 1.5 years old. And my mother and father were divorced not too long afterwards, and the argument was that my father, there are 2 different things. It could have been genetic. I could have been born with it, and it could have been genetic. It could have been German measles, or it could have been that my father used to take target practice by the house, and my mother would sit me outside, and she accuses him of blowing my eardrums out.
I thought of myself and think of myself as Rebecca. I am deaf. I am a woman. I am a mother. I am a daughter. I am a wife. All of those things make me who I am. I don't separate my deafness. My deafness is a part of me. So did that influence me in becoming a rabbi? As Rebecca, I made that decision to become a rabbi, not because I am deaf, but because of who I am.
I lost my hearing. I don't know for sure, but I lost it either through measles or through an inner ear infection of some kind. According to my mother, I just woke up one morning and I couldn't hear. And then some of it came back, but not a lot of it. Yeah. So that was that awareness. And my mother figured it out because she was in the kitchen and she was calling me and I wasn't responding.
I became deaf when I was 18 months old, and my parents were initially shocked because they didn't anticipate that, and they've never had deafness in their family, being the only one in the family deaf. So they immediately put me into a speech training, and I had intensive speech training because clearly not being able to hear affects your speech. And they checked out a number of schools which might have been good, but they decided to keep me at home at schools in the neighborhood. And they were very, very supportive. And I learned to sign when I was 5 years old. And whatever it was that worked for me in terms of communication is what they chose. And I thought they made the best decision.
Growing up being deaf, if I'm being absolutely honest, was very isolating. It was very lonely. It was very confusing. I didn't have a lot of friends. A lot of times I didn't understand what was going on. I was always the student in class that didn't hear what the teacher was saying, that didn't know what the assignments were, that it was kind of disappointing. It was not a good childhood from that standpoint. And I grew up in a small town where the school district didn't know how to handle somebody that didn't hear well. And to give them credit, there were a couple teachers that really tried, but overall it was very hard.
To have a spiritual life. So I don't look at myself as one who doesn't hear and thinking about God. I think God is in each one of us. But I'm very comfortable the fact that there's silence around. I mean, I love the fact when it's quiet.
Well, you know, I remember in those days, we sort of hid it, so it was very difficult. I felt like I was always faking my way through. And, you know, as a young child, it was just struggling to know what was going on. And then the teenage years hit, and the kids were really awful, and that was very hard too. But what came out of it was that I really learned to focus. Because I didn't have much of a social life, I had a lot of time to think on my hands. And I'd think about how I wanted to live my life, and I would be counting on the calendar when I could leave home so I would have more control over my life.
The biggest challenge when I was growing up probably would be when people didn't understand my deafness, that they didn't understand that when they communicate with me, they have to look at me, or we have to speak slowly, or if we couldn't communicate, at least learn somehow to use a paper and pencil. My biggest pet peeve was when people realized I was deaf, and then they just ignored me, and then they just left.
Is there anything unique about the relationship between you and your husband as a couple, as pairs, or are you a pretty typical and ordinary, just like any other married couple?
Very much so. I think so. We argue, we laugh, we disagree, we agree, we think this is better, we think that's good.
I couldn't hear what was going on. I was very much introspective and kind of trapped in my own little world, had my own little friends and my own little environment. So a lot of my childhood was just kind of playing out in the woods and watching the sunrises and sunsets.
Well, I think it's so true today. It's what happens at the family table. You know, with so many different conversations going at once. I mean, this is a huge family, so everybody has an opinion. Sometimes they have two opinions, you know, and everybody wants to make sure that they're speaking, and there's interruptions and so forth. So it gets very loud and noisy, and I just lose it. I just sit there, and every so often my mother would, you know, tell me what they're talking about, and then but that was one big deal about growing up and not being able to follow the conversations at the family table.
Yeah.
So from their point of view, they had a broken child. They had a child that wasn't perfect. Now, my parents loved me very much, but I think their initial reaction was, oh my God, how do we handle this? We have no experience with this kind of situation. We don't know what we did wrong, and we don't know what to do to fix it.
I think because in those days we were taught to hide the problem. It was a challenge getting through every day and trying to make do. So that was very tough.
Yeah, did you always have to keep it in, like all your pain, or?
Well, I just, you know, it wasn't even a matter of keeping it in. It just wasn't done in those days.
Yeah.
I never thought I was going to marry a deaf man. I didn't think so. I didn't, because when I was growing up, I wasn't around deaf people. I was always the only one who was deaf. So I was always with hearing people. And I never really thought I was going to meet others like me. So I met Michael when I was 18. It was my first week of college. A nice, huge boy. Oh, how can I turn him down? But from that point on, we started dating. But I didn't think I was going to meet someone. And it's wonderful because, as I was telling you about the family table, we have each other, so we can talk to each other. We don't have to use our voices. We can just look and talk and just enjoy the family, or we try to help each other out. It's an extra nice thing to have to share with someone who understands what I'm going through or what he's going through.
I want people to look at me and treat me with love and respect, just as they would with anybody else. And not be judgmental, because at the end of the day, we're all human and we all have our differences. And it's just a matter of saying, you know what, no one is perfect, but we are perfect where we're nice and gentle and respectful of each other. That's perfect.
Growing up, I didn't think that there were any advantages to being deaf. I always thought of it as a negative. I always thought that that was the thing that stood between me and anybody else that was normal, that was happy, that was intelligent, that was cool and socially accepted. But as I got older, looking back, I realized that because I could turn my hearing aid off and spend hours of time just being in my own world, hours of time reading, hours of time writing poetry, hours of time just looking at things around me, it's almost like I have a deeper relationship with God, in a sense, because I don't have the cacophony of everything around me distracting me and telling me who I am.
And then when I went to kindergarten, no, not kindergarten, first grade, my mother put me in a private school, and I got a lot of attention, but it was very scary because I knew they meant business, and I was always afraid of not doing the right thing, and I was always looking, and you know, that kind of thing. And then I would get upset and cry because they were teaching us a song in Spanish, and I was having enough trouble with English, let alone Spanish.
Yeah.
So.
When I was little, I had a lot of friends. I had both hearing and deaf friends. A lot of them were from Temple, and I also got bat mitzvahed. A lot of them weren't also Jewish too, but my mom always made sure that I had play dates, and because I got very anxious, and so I was always out with my friends. We were either at the movies or we were roller skating. We'd go bowling. It really was. I mean, I keep in touch with all my old friends too. I still do to this day. It really is important to keep your old friends and to keep your new ones too.
I'm deaf, completely deaf in my right ear, so I don't wear anything on that. And then on my left ear, I have a hearing aid on my left ear. And I always carry an extra hearing aid battery. I have hearing aid batteries everywhere, but yeah.
Yeah.
In high school, it was more or less okay. You know, like I said, the math and the sciences were rough, but I had to work especially hard in the other subjects to balance maybe the C's I would get in math and science. So it was hard. I worked very hard. And interestingly enough, I took Latin, which they don't teach anymore. But I loved it to death. You know, you didn't have to speak Latin. You had to memorize, and then you had to read.
We had interviews. There were about 17 or 18 jobs. I applied to all of them. Marco and I were prepared to go anywhere because I had no idea if anybody would hire me. Fortunately, I was given 3 offers, 3 different places, and we ended up going to New Jersey for my first pulpit. Though I was very concerned, but fortunately, as I began to work, I began to build up my confidence in what I learned how to, the day-to-day things, and what it means to be a rabbi with experience. I have some wonderful mentors, and I have some colleagues that have always been there for me to help me and so forth. But only for that period of time. But after 4 or 5 years in the rabbinate, I never felt that my deafness would hold an obstacle.
You're lucky. I remember when I got clogs. I don't know if you know what clogs are.
Oh my God.
But they're shoes where you slide into them. You know, they don't have a back on them. You slide into them, and they were really high. And my neighbor had a whole bunch of clogs, and couldn't wait to wear. I couldn't wait to wear them for my bat mitzvah. So I bought them 3 weeks before my bat mitzvah, or maybe like a month. And I begged my parents, please let me wear the clogs at my bat mitzvah just one time before the bat mitzvah. And they said no. Until the day of my bat mitzvah, I was so thrilled because I woke up and I got to wear my clogs. They wouldn't let me wear them before the bat mitzvah. It was so funny.
I think for a long time, my father wanted me to be a very practical person. He wanted me to be an accountant, be a nurse, be somebody with a 9-to-5 job that was consistent, somebody that had an IRA and a Medicare and all the stuff lined up. My mother was always a little bit of a dreamer herself, and she always supported me. And my father, now that he sees that I'm actually doing well with what I do, he supports me. But when you're a filmmaker, it's not very tangible. You don't really understand what people do when they make movies, especially if their movies aren't the one that's showing at the theater next door to you. So it's hard to see the payoff right away. It takes a long time.
Well, being deaf in Hollywood can be tough. People get it, and other people don't get it. They don't know quite how to use a deaf character in the storyline. And that's why I produce, and that's why I have people in my circle who help create material that be turned into a television series or a film. Because that's why I'm also an author, because I can create my own roles. I can't sit and wait for work to come to me. It can be tough, but I never let it get in my way, and shouldn't let anyone get in your way in terms of being creative, in terms of making things happen. You can't sit back and expect people to get it. You can't expect people to give it to you. But the ones who do get it have written such beautiful material for me and such wonderful characters for me, and I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
I've always felt God's presence in my life all the time. And which is one of the reasons why I became a rabbi, because I want to share that feeling of spiritual connection with God and with people around me, which is why I do what I do now.
The three of us always laugh because when we make a joke and we say we both felt lucky to find somebody who would marry us. So that was kind of a funny thing. We have a wonderful relationship. I think for someone, I'm being very candid with you, for someone to go marry a hearing impaired person, it's a commitment. Because there's so many things that pop up that they need to help you with.
Yeah.
And they just have to. There's no way about it. So, that part can be challenging, but for the most part, he's extremely patient. And it's automatic now.
Well, I do the best I can when I need to communicate. Sometimes there are situations where, for example, your mom or your brother can't understand because there's a lot of noise, or they're focusing on something because they're preoccupied. It's the same for me. When I'm driving, I really need to focus on the road because my kids know that. When they're fighting in the back seat and they need my attention, I'll pull over and I'll stop and I'll say, hey, what's going on? Or if there's something that's really important, they wait. And if it's an emergency, I have to pull over. But there's nothing that we can't do. We try to make communication as easy as possible. And my kids can sign if they feel like it.
What inspired you to become a rabbi?
I think because of my love for Judaism, and I grew up in a home where Judaism was celebrated, and I explained that I love teaching and counseling and being a part of people's lives from birth to death, all the life cycle events, and being there for that time.
That's nice.
If I hadn't been a cinematographer, I think I would have been a really good sitter. I really like to sit, and I really like to read, and I sometimes like to sit, read, and drink coffee at the same time. So I think I'd be reading right now, and if I weren't reading, I'd probably be writing. So if I hadn't been a cinematographer, I'd probably be a writer.
Like when you don't hear anything, do you sort of imagine or sort of, listen or talk to God on your own?
Well, I think it doesn't matter whether I hear or don't hear in order to have a spiritual life. Yeah. So I don't look at myself as one who doesn't hear and thinking about God. I think God is in each one of us. But I'm very comfortable the fact that there's silence around. I mean, I love the fact when it's quiet. So I think that's really, I really don't separate my deafness from me.
Yeah.
My husband and I are very much like any other couple. We are in love, and we've been married for 18 years. We have 4 beautiful children, and we are as parents as best as we can be for our parents. And I mean, he signs fluently, and I understand him very well, and he understands me when I speak, and he's used to my voice and how I speak. And my kids, just look at us as mom and dad, really, and there's no special needs or considerations that are being made as husband and wife to make this marriage work, except for the fact that or make accommodations in terms of communicating, in sign, making sure he understands me. But that's all. Pretty much it's the same otherwise.
Yeah, I had a few people that did, because I was really too much of a handful for one person. So, and then I would drive them crazy, and then I'd figure, oh, you better go find another mentor, because she's really had it, So I had a few.
I don't live my life in anger because I can't hear. But sometimes I think I hear more than other people who hear because they choose not to listen. So it has helped me to be a very compassionate human being. It has helped me to be a very strong listener. It has helped me to be more observant, like more aware of what's going on, because we use our eyes more than our ears. And also I've learned to trust my gut. When I think something, I can sense sometimes with my congregant if something troubling them, and I go right up to them and say, everything okay? And then we start that conversation. So I think it's because I'm very, when you don't have one sense, you use your other more.
Yeah. Oh, yes.
I honestly do not feel I've been successful in that way. I've been successful in terms of educating myself well. Yeah. There's a difference between being accomplished and successful. Yeah. And I would say, yes, I am accomplished. But no, I'm not. I may or may not be successful. That's a very subjective.
Have you ever doubted yourself that becoming a cinematographer was too hard?
Oh my goodness. Oh my goodness. I don't really think of doubt as an option. I mean, you just do what you do. You might feel that you could have done a better job, or you might feel that maybe you could have made better choices, or you might wish that you were better at what you do at that moment of time. But I don't think there's any doubt in my mind that I will always be a cinematographer, and that I will always strive to be a storyteller and a filmmaker.
Try it again.
So you go here, 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 and then grab.
Okay, no, okay, show me. Okay.
Wait, don't focus. So here, 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 here. Grab, here, and slap. As well as through my mitzvah project, which involved interviewing deaf women who are accomplished and successful. When I asked each of them how they overcame difficulties connected to their hearing loss, they responded that it was all about advocating or speaking up for themselves. So what I learned from the Torah, I learned from these women as well. They are role models for me to remember that no matter what my struggle is with my hearing loss, it will not get in the way of what I want to become. Toda Rabah.